I have an announcement to make. I'd like to exchange an egg.
I've made my choice, and I choose me.
Attention Beverly Hills 90210 fans. You are now entering a song-by-song, episode-by-episode count of the making of America's most famous zip code. It's now time for the Beverly Hills 90210 show.
No interruptions, you got it.
Okay, here we are with our new intro. Everything is exciting, and we're back with our usual suspect in Chuck Rosin. How are you, man? How's your week been?
Been a pretty good week. We got the clearance that our daughter is going to let my wife hold our granddaughter. We passed the quarantine limitation, so be a happy time tomorrow when she does that.
That's very cool. And then we have Lilly, who's with us again, representing all the groups and the fans. How's your week been? How's quarantine going for you, Lilly?
It's still going. As good as we can get.
There's no end in sight. And then, of course, we're joined this week by the former chairman of Fox, the man that made all of this happen for us 90210 fans, Sandy Grushow. How are you, my man?
It'd be better if he was Grushow.
Well, I'm quarantined at 90210, as it turns out.
There you go. Yeah.
You're up the canyon, right, Sandy?
Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
Cool. So this week, we're going to talk a little bit about the episode Beach Blanket Brandon, but we're going to talk a lot about also, Sandy's involvement in the show. I think you and Charles are both Beverly High alums. Yes. Is that true, Chuck?
It's true. So, Sandy, my year was 1970, coming up on that big reunion that probably won't happen because it'll be canceled for Corona. But our year was the first year that the new building was actually a new building. And to go to school there, we would park in the Twin Towers at Century City and walk over across the street because there was no traffic on Century Park East because there was no buildings except for the Auto Club. And that was, so that was that old school.
Thankfully, I'm young you are, Chuck. 1978.
All right.
So
you started there the year, go through all, when did your family move into Beverly Hills?
1971, very much like the Walshes. My parents and my sister, who was actually going directly into Beverly Hills High School. I was actually in one of the elementary schools, El Rodeo. I was going into the 6th grade. So needless to say, when this show came along, it really, kind of resonated for me on a number of different levels.
Chuck, how did you hear that Sandy was coming on board?
Well, we didn't know it was Sandy, but I remember it really well because we were filming Isn't It Romantic, the AIDS episode. We were out in a bunch of theater scenes in Ventura Boulevard, and Karen was going to have a baby in about 2 weeks. Avery was coming. She was big. And we were told there was going to be a management shakeup. I don't need to say who Sandy replaced, but I do know that there was actually clapping on the set, that we had made it. We had, because the first 12, Sandy, technically came in at 13 in the governance part of it. First 12 were really rough. We were going back and forth, and Fox was learning how to be a network, and we didn't have much money to play with. We were the lowest license fee in TV. We were split in that first year between spelling and propaganda. Who did I report to? I remember asking somebody, who's my boss? Because they really had different outlooks on a lot of different things. So if you see a little wild inconsistency in those first 12 tonally, it might have something to do with that.
And for Sandy, how did you?
I was actually at the network running marketing. I had come in 88 to build the first proper marketing department at the network. And I remember I was exhausted. We had moved The Simpsons from Sunday night to Thursday night. We basically were betting the entire network on going up against Cosby. And when we actually wound up doing that and were successful, I called, Barry Diller and Jamie Kellner and Peter Chernin and said, I'm fried. I got to do something else. And within a couple of days, I was the senior vice president of current programming and scheduling. And that's how, we wound up working so closely together. But I actually launched the show from a marketing standpoint. And as I was alluding to, started out as a family show. That's how we read it. That's what we thought it was going to be. That's how we marketed it. And it took a half a season for us to actually figure out what it was.
We were told, Sandy, if you remember, we did a Brandon episode, then a Brenda episode, then a Brenda episode, then a Brenda, back and forth. Now, Darren early on upset the apple cart because he did a Kelly episode, Perfect Mom. But it was really about, but still, it was about a mom. It was the family connection, and it made for a lot of warmth. I was real comfortable with that show. And then all of a sudden, we're an international sensation. And it was different. Of course, the Gulf War, you want to talk about that a little bit? How the Gulf War made it, was good for all of us?
Yeah, I think, even before that, as I was mentioning, I started to think back, at least try to think back 30 years. And Chuck, this was your baby. You lived in this, you marinated in it. I worked on hundreds of shows, so I'm going to trust your memory more than my own. But I do know that this show was failing in the ratings. And we had a big meeting, Barry Diller, Jamie Kellner, Peter Chernin, and myself to talk about canceling the show. It was probably around December. And the discussion turned to, okay, if we pull it off the air, what are we going to put in its place? And as it turns out, because we were such a young network, we really didn't have anything to replace it with. And that's called dumb luck, right? We became geniuses by virtue of not having anything to replace it with, because we left it on the air. It gave you guys an opportunity to really find the essence of the show, which was, really a youth ensemble drama. It wasn't a family drama. And at the network, we caught up to what was working, and we started to market the heck out of it. And so that's when, things really started to happen, I think, in, really the spring, early spring. We really started to see ratings.
I would go to bed every night. I tell my wife, I'd say, hey, okay, it's time for me now to say my prayers. And my prayer was always the same. God bless the children of New York City, and Long Island, because they're the ones who found us, and Los Angeles too. But really, New York was those first weeks, because we would get it broken down, partially because it was one of the few, LA and New York, you had good stations. You had the old Metro Media Group.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
right.
And Lori says that was the best decision ever to keep 90210 on. So there we go. That's a fan already getting some of the fans in here. So
it was completely my idea to keep it.
Did you guys ever, was there ever any kind of disagreements about when Sandy came in? I know, Chuck, you had mentioned to me something about Fame is Where You Find It. That there were some.
I don't know if you remember this, Sandy. You remember the one? It was the first one you came. We had, the network was tired of all the social drama. So the person I would talk to mostly was not Sandy, in truth. There was an intermediary, a really good guy named Dan McDermott, who was there right from the start and who now is the new president of AMC. But he would talk about
really
it.
Talented.
Really, yes. And also writer, you got really multi guy. And he was the one that basically said, you followed what we asked you to do. We had an AIDS episode. We had the rape episode. We had this episode. You got to lighten it up a little bit. And so we started. I mean, Darren Star wrote the slumber party one, girls dancing around and the guys get their card thing. Where's the high watermark? The one episode I wish I really would have written because it was really terrific. And then this one comes up, and is it real? Is it not real? Should it be a dream sequence? What should we do? We settle on it, and Sandy looks at it and says, I think it should be a fantasy. No, we can't afford to do that, and because Aaron Spelling had a partner, Duke Vincent, and Duke Vincent told me anytime the network would ever say to me, any executive of the network, not just my friend Sandy here, would say to me, you got to reshoot, you got to do something. Duke said the reflex response has to be, okay, but who's paying for it? Because we had no money and they had no money, so we would, okay, good idea. Let's go on.
So that
remember that at all or not, Sandy?
Zero recollection.
Zero. As you said, I'm stewing in it. I'm writing the book, not you. That's.
I just remember the big moments. Right.
Yeah.
I remember as we were starting to get traction, you and Darren Star and Dan and I would occasionally have lunch in my office, and we'd map out the arcs of the season. And what I recall very vividly is the conversation we had, the meeting we had in my office, the four of us talking about the final, 5 episodes of the season, and of course the issue of, should Brenda and Dylan consummate their relationship or not, came up, and obviously that was a pretty big decision, and I, I'm not sure I've told you this in 30 years. I mean, I knew that if we allowed that to happen, it was going to be a shit show. And so I just sort of said, it's better to apologize than to ask for permission. And I figured once you wrote the script, the script would go to Don Bay and Broadcast Standards. Probably a lot of your listeners,
I think they love this stuff.
Don't even.
So, yeah.
The inside baseball. Yeah, Darlene Liblick.
Anyway, I knew that Don Bay would read the script, have a conniption, and call Jamie Kellner, who oversaw the business aspects of the network, ad sales, affiliate relations, broadcast standards. And so I remember getting the script, and within an hour, like clockwork, my assistant said, Mr. Kellner would like to see you in his office. And it was like being called down to the principal's office. I mean, that's exactly what it felt like. And as it turns out, Jamie was just a great guy. And, even though he wasn't overseeing necessarily the creative part of the network, he had creative chops, and he also respected the process. And he wanted to know why we had made the decision. And I told him that you and Darren felt very strongly about it. And it's hard to argue. It's obviously a heightened reality, but our goal was to try to tell stories that felt, sort of intellectually and emotionally honest to teenagers that were in high school. And even back in 1990, kids were having sex, in high school. I wasn't, but people were. And so, Jamie was like, okay, I get it. And then all hell broke loose. As you know.
Well, it's fun. From my standpoint, Stan, I think you might know this. I do remember that the marching orders were, let's find probably even before the meeting you described from Dan, let's find a cliffhanger. And I just said either to Darren, well, the best cliffhanger is I'm late. That's always the best. And why I was really interested in that moment was for what happens in the episode that we're going to be talking about in a little bit, that Beach Blanket Brandon, because that moment where a teenage girl has to tell her father she's sexually active is something that a girlfriend of mine at Beverly High described to me in detail once, and it was very poignant. So I wanted that scene. I knew, Shannon and James could play the hell out of it. So to have the cliffhanger and have that scene, they had to do it. So that was really the tail was wagging the dog.
How did it come to you? Like, how did you guys talk about Brenda losing her virginity? Where does that come in your world?
If it was 30 years ago for me too. Oh, go on.
In my office, as I said, a meeting between Darren Star, Chuck, and Dan McDermott, who was running current programming. I was overseeing it. We had a conversation about the last 5 episodes. It may have been 4, it may have been 6, but we got together during the course of the year and kind of mapped out what the season was going to look like. And in this particular meeting,
we have I didn't mean to cut you off, Sandy, but our mystery guest has joined the group. There he is, Mr. Darren Star.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Darren.
How are you?
Joined the group. Yeah.
Happy to see you.
Great to see you guys. Hey, Sandy. Did I
Is
freeze?
his audio on?
Did you hear it?
I can hear you. I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Sandy, can you hear Darren?
I'm going to come over here for possibly some better lighting. We'll see.
There you go.
I thought this was podcast. I didn't know it was video.
You're not.
I would have showered.
Can you guys?
Well, I
Darren,
like the look. You did good.
Okay.
It was a good choice.
Darren, go out of the room and come back in. Sometimes that fixes it so that the other person can hear you.
What? Who can't hear? Can you hear me now?
Sandy can't hear you. So
Sandy could never. He never listened.
I don't like it what he just said.
Yeah,
But
he just dropped the mic. He just dropped the mic right there. And is that what?
Really? I meant leave the studio and then come back into the room. If you see what that's
Podcast room.
yeah.
What's that?
run
You're
around
gonna
the
do
block once.
I did walk out and come in. Can you hear me, Sandy?
No, I meant
Like leave the chat room and then
What's
come
that?
back into the chat room.
Oh, you mean leave this thing and come back again? Which was
yeah. There's a button on the bottom that says leave studio. Exit that, come back in, and then he should be able to hear you. Yeah. That seems to be the fix on that glitch.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah, he'll be back.
I feel like the co-star in like Come Back Little Sheba. You remember that old movie with anyway, it's an old title. You have to be my age to know it.
Yeah.
Shirley Booth won an Oscar for it.
Oh, that's funny. Well, anyway, before Darren, it might take him a second to come back in. Sandy, you were kind of recapping this conversation, but Chuck, did you and Darren, and we can get Darren in this in a second, did you and Darren have that conversation before talking to Sandy that we need to have Brenda lose her virginity, or was that something that just popped up with Sandy? Okay, Darren's back. Let's see.
okay. Is that any better?
How about now, Sandy?
Good for me.
No,
Yeah.
Now you can hear me? No?
No, I don't know. I don't know why that is.
I never
maybe
listened
Sandy-
to him during 90210 or Melrose Place anyway.
I
This is perfect.
I can hear you. I can hear Sandy.
All right, so we'll reiterate whatever Darren.
We'll reiterate what Darren is saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
A United Nations.
Sandy, you could also try
I don't know
to.
if you can hear me.
He can. Sandy, you could also try to leave the studio and come back in if you want to attempt that as well. But if not, we can just nope.
Like what I did. Yeah.
Oh man, no. Actual leave the chat and then anyway, Darren, we were just getting to a place. Welcome to the show. Thank you. We're so excited to have you here. I mean, listen, there's so many people watching right now that just we're so thankful for what you all created. So let's just start off on that. I mean,
And before you do, I just would like to say something to Susan McCaffrey and Tammy Bender Shallow, who guessed that the mystery guest was our friend Darren here.
very cool. But I mean, so many moments, so many things that touched us all, and this crew here that helped put this together with a bunch of other people too. So just thank you. So start on
Fun to revisit all this.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Sandy's back.
Sandy, can you hear me now?
I'm here.
Can you hear Darren?
Can you hear me?
No.
No.
Oh boy.
We will
I won't take it personally.
we'll translate.
These guys live about across the street from each other, to make a mile from each other. I think so. I think you're nearby that part of town.
By the way, Peter asked a really interesting question, which is, did you and Chuck, before we had that working lunch in my office with Dan McDermott, where we sort of mapped out the last 5 or 6 episodes of the season, as we were kind of want to do during the course of the year, had you guys decided going into that meeting that Brenda was going to lose her virginity, or is that something that came up in the meeting? Because I don't remember.
Do you mean the first season?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're back to we went back to the first season.
Right.
And we were kind of
I think we were keeping it to ourselves, weren't we, Chuck? I think we weren't sharing. We weren't sharing everything.
Yeah, I'm a little vague on it too, but what I remember is you wanted a cliffhanger, and I worked with Darlene Lieblich a lot, the lady who did standards and practices, and she liked how we did it. From our vantage point, I don't remember it worrying about the shit show or something. We knew it was going to make the episode, and you had that funny thing in Spring Dance when the girls had the same dress on. So, we had stuff, and you had, Brandon and Andrea. There were other stuff going on in Spring Dance,
Yeah,
So
but we knew it was going to be, controversial.
Right.
Darren, before you hopped on, I was saying that within an hour of the script being delivered to the lot, the first draft, I got a call from Jamie Kellner's office to go downstairs and see him, which was like being called to the principal's office. And Don Bay, who Darlene worked for, had already called Jamie and said, we got a problem here. And Jamie, wanted to hear from me, why we had done it. And I had explained that you and Chuck felt very strongly about it. And even though, the show was obviously a heightened reality, we were trying to stay as true as we could to, sort of an authentic high school experience. And even back in 1990, kids were having sex in high school, especially if they went out for an extended period of time. And so Jamie was actually okay with it. I think it wasn't until it aired that we really started to hear it from the affiliates. Yeah.
But
that's when I think we had to come back to you guys.
That's where
we need there to be some consequences.
Yeah, I didn't feel like there was a reaction until after the affiliates saw it. But
that's how I remember it too, Darren. You guys were good on it.
But when I first came,
that's because I took the bullet.
When I first came in to talk to Fox about this show, the whole idea was that it was going to be like a more modern version of teenage life. And when Chuck and I were working on it, we were always thinking about how to, that we were trying to do something relevant and relatable, and not, and that's what sort of set the show apart. I think that's what actually got the audience invested in it. But Brandon had sex in the 4th episode.
Darren, that was your first. That was your first episodic script.
Yeah,
that first time.
That was the first episode of 90210 I wrote after the pilot, and basically, nobody mentioned anything about that. That wasn't an issue. He had sex with his girlfriend who came to visit. So
right,
and he thought that was the first time for her, and it wasn't.
I guess we didn't think about a double standard at the time. We thought, well, Brandon had sex, and now Brenda's going to have sex, so we didn't really expect there to be that kind of reaction.
And we didn't know about your station affiliates in the Midwest.
That's right.
So we didn't know how some of these people who would be selling, the Ginsu knives late at night, how they would react to this.
It was problematic. And
I remember the meeting. Yeah.
You, Chuck, were not thrilled with being told that there needed to be some consequences, but you wound up dealing with it.
That's right. And the reason being, just real quick, get out of the way. I had a young daughter at the time, Lindsay, who's actually in our business now, but she and I had another one, little baby, and the idea of that intellectually, the Madonna whore split, I didn't want her to not feel guilty about having sexual impulses. So I'm thinking about her at 5 years old, this is my daughter's future. So that was where my passion on it came from, when I was thinking about more the joy of sex. And we always also felt that because she didn't show remorse at the, when she comes down and all the gang is together, that was, another thing that rubbed the fundamentalists the wrong way.
But I was wondering about that.
That was the shit show I was referring to.
Right. But I remember the network reaction to the show was that shot when they were all hugging each other. I remember the network, everybody feeling like, wow, that's such a wonderful, iconic image of this group of kids, our cast. So
in fact, I don't know if Sandy remembers that, but that was your you told me that was your favorite show. It defined the series for you.
I have no idea what he just said.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
The shot, you remember Darren pulled back, the guys are all together and they're in a semicircle and the band is playing and it pulled back. Yeah, I remember you really responding to that shot, that you liked that moment.
But I guess you have to repeat to Sandy the fact that Brandon had sex in the 4th episode, and it seemed like it was fine. So when Brenda had sex, we didn't really anticipate it being an issue. Sandy, can you read lips, Sandy?
Anyway, let's move it along here. At some point, you're looking, because we want to get to Beach Blanket Brandon, but you are at some point looking for a resolve to or a cliffhanger for the end of the first season, right? Where does I'm Late come from?
For me, I said I thought it would be a good way to end it. We did a scene, we shot it. It was the last scene. The same person who shot that episode also shot Beach Blanket Brandon. Braverman did both of them, and he shot that scene, and it was a good scene. We edited the show, and Sandy was really an expert in promotion. That was his thing, really. So for all week, before it was going to air, it's Brenda going, I'm late. That was the what they did. Went right for the core of the matter, and about the East Coast show was third. I don't know exactly the time, but there was a decision made that Mr. Spelling knew of. I don't think Darren did. I certainly didn't do. That scene was going to be cut out for whatever reason, the same one that they didn't promote all week. So Spelling never called me, and I flipped out. I was more mad at him than you guys because, I hate being blindsided. It is my pet peeve in life, still probably is. And so, you could have told me, I'm not waiting, because I found out watching it. There's a scene.
What about
you? Do you have any recollection of that, Darren, or not?
I just remember the outcry after the show aired and feeling like we had to clean this up at the beginning of the next season and figure out a way for Brenda to come to terms with feeling that she was too sexually early, and then broke up with Dylan over it. I thought, thinking about writing that episode, I thought, okay, how to try to make this play and make it emotionally believable. And, I kind of felt like one thing we did with the show was have all of our characters feel pretty honest and frank about their emotions. And so this is one where, had to not punish Brenda for having, we didn't want to punish Brenda for having sex, but we wanted her. We needed to address the sort of elephant in the room that we had to kind of like take a few steps backwards from their relationship, from not making their relationship sexual going forward. Is that how you remember it, Chuck?
Yeah, Sandy. So Darren had the role of having to try to figure out what to do with this, and I was of no help. At that point, I was just too pissed off at the whole thing and that this would happen. And it just, and Darren had to, in effect, get certain story points in that, and I made Breslin, he's taking dictation in this. But as I think I just told you, I just watched the episode that we're going to be talking about. And, you as a writer, just let's talk about the writing for a second. You really did a remarkable job. The language holds up. It would be like this could be a conversation that here in 2020 you could have and not be at all feeling condescended or you're watching something anachronistic. It's very natural. They played it naturally until the last moment when which was not what you wrote. You write sometimes you would write a line for Shannon and it would be, "Oh, come on, Dad, don't do that." And it would come out as, "Dad, don't do that." And so the last line was, a little bit melodramatic, but it was a, really something worthwhile for you to see again. Seriously.
I didn't know. I watched it before we all, before I went to, came to talk to everybody about this. And
Didn't you think it held up?
Yeah, it was fun to watch. I have to say, for me, I literally can't remember writing any of it. But
That's interesting. Yeah.
I really don't know, but I was like, I felt it held up, and it reminded me just how committed all those actors were. I mean, the cast was so good. They really Dylan and Luke and Shannon.
Yeah. For me, Brandon, for Jason and Shannon. Yeah. I mean, they were young, they were beautiful, and they were into it, and they took They clearly took direction. I mean, they were, and
they were committed.
Let me ask Sandy, when does the idea for summer episodes pop up in the network's idea? Where does that come from? And then I want to know how you guys reacted to, oh shit, we're going to do some summer episodes too.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. I can't tell you the day or week, and probably not even the month. But what had happened was, as I said earlier before Darren hopped on, the show got off to a really slow start from a rating standpoint. And it took a while for the show to find its voice creatively. And it took a while for the audience to find the show. Part of it was we were a little network with crappy little stations all over America. And part of it was, it wasn't compelling in the way it quickly became compelling when the focus really turned to it becoming what then became known as a youth ensemble drama as opposed to a family show. And we didn't have nearly the data that people have today on the audience. We just had, demographics. And we would see every week female teens it just kept going up. And it got to the point where it became clear to us that, we had heartthrobs on our hands. And that's when we started to go to malls and we started to cut promos that felt a little bit like MTV, because we were both kind of happening at the same time, MTV and Fox. And so, the footage was quick cuts and grainy and big graphics, and it just really changed the flavor of the show. And the show really started to get traction. And we had a meeting, and I don't, remember specifics, but one of the things we started to talk about was, what if we kept going? Rather than ending at the end of May Suites and doing what historically, networks did, which was, as I said earlier, hang a gone fishing sign outside and come back in September. What if we stayed on the air? I had the misfortune of having that conversation with Chuck, who was really tired and really ornery. But after he blew off his steam, which is sort of part of my job and part of Dan's job, and Jonathan Littman too. We haven't mentioned him.
He came in year 2.
Okay, so
during these summer episodes, in fact.
Yeah. So Chuck got on board, and then the question became, what should it look like? And a couple of things were colliding for me during the course of that discussion. One was that, I was a member in the 70s of the Sand and Sea Club down in Santa Monica. So, that was kind of my life. And plus, a couple of years earlier, I was the vice president of creative advertising in the feature film division and worked on a movie called The Flamingo Kid with an actor named Matt Dillon, where he played a cabana boy. And I think I pitched that idea. And you never know, I mean, I had no expectation that Darren and Chuck were going to go away and come back and say, yes, we think it's
Well,
good.
I remember you saying it. Just to jump in just for a second, Darren. Here, I remember you telling us that in Spelling about specifically Flamingo Kid. We were in the Manor, Mr. Spelling's name for his new mansion, the most expensive house built in L.A. at the time. And you were there too, right, Darren? We were there together. Yeah. And I had just before the network got there, before Darren even you got there, I got there first. Mr. Spelling was there and Duke Vincent getting a little tour of the house. It looks beautiful. We go into a little side room for this. I sit in a chair. It's one of Sandy's antiques. The whole thing breaks.
I broke the chair. I thought it was
and so the 10 minutes before the network is getting there, I remember Aaron and Duke plotting, what are they going to tell Sandy happened to the chair?
By the way, that chair probably cost $300,000.
Yeah, it's going to finance the whole.
I do remember you breaking the chair, and I actually thought you were going to be fired.
No, I remember.
You thought I was
I was in the room.
Me too.
I was in the library.
But I remember responding really well. I love the Flamingo Kid. Darren would know that when we broke characters, one of the reasons Dylan was named Dylan was not Bob Dylan, it was Matt Dylan, because the younger guy and the motorcycle part of that person.
I didn't know that. Wow, that's fun. Yeah, very cool. Yeah.
So and the Sand and Sea Club that Sandy references had just gone out of business, and they were some problems with the pipes, and they were going to build a luxury hotel right at that spot, and the city of Santa Monica had to vote on it, and the city of Santa Monica said, you're not getting a hotel. So it just stayed there empty, and then you spring this on us. And what Sandy is saying with the beach club there, right next to it was a beach that used to be called Tees Beach. And that's where kids of Beverly Hills High School and the middle schools would go every day after summer school. Every local high school, Darren, had a beach. Hamilton had a beach, Fairfax, Uni. Beverly was ours because, of course, ours had to be next to the Jewish Beach Club. Where else would we be?
Darren, how did you react when you heard there was going to be summer episodes?
Well, I remember that meeting, being in Sandy's office, and it was sort of like
you saw the chair get broken?
No, this is before when they told us at Fox that we were going to have the summer episodes. And I was there with Chuck, and I remember them. It was sort of like, we have good news, bad news. The good news is the show was performing better in reruns than it was in the originals. I remember that the reruns were actually doing better in rating, and the show was on this big trajectory. And they said they felt that they didn't want to stop the momentum, and they had this idea to bring the show back in the summer. And that was sort of the quote bad news. That we wouldn't have a hiatus. I know Chuck was dead. I think we were all kind of like ready for a break, and it was kind of a bit of a shock that there would not be a break. That we were just going to go, just kind of like roll right into the next season tomorrow.
Sandy, he said it was a bit of a shock. Basically, I summed it up for Sandy.
To do summer episodes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, nobody had done it before, as I said. Chuck, you worked on Northern Exposure. That was a summer replacement show, but nobody had really taken a very successful primetime drama that for us cost a lot of money and said, let's keep making original episodes throughout the summer. And that was a biggie. As I said, Rupert thought we were out of our minds. He said, advertisers don't want to spend money in the summer.
But ask Sandy if you can recall that the reruns were beating the originals in terms of the rating.
Darren said the reruns were beating the originals in the ratings. Is that true?
Yeah. That's when it was. I mean, we were coming down the home stretch, and the thing just kept getting bigger. And so, in retrospect, it seems like earth-shattering idea. It was fairly self-evident at the time that it would have been an act of insanity to stop. But the key was to go back to, you know, Chuck and Darren, and I never worried about Darren. It was always Chuck whose head would explode. And so I knew Chuck was really tired, and
I was ornery at the time, and all of this, and especially once the Brenda thing happened. But I was thinking of a story today, Sandy, that I got to tell you. I don't think you know this story either, Darren. So Monday night, like all during this period of time, I think I don't even know if it was before we rendezvoused in Hawaii in Maui together, but I'm with our close friends and Karen, and into the restaurant's called Morton's in West Hollywood, and every Monday night it was like a club restaurant for Hollywood executives, mostly in the feature business, quite frankly, and that's where my friends wanted to go. I didn't even know about the Monday night. I'm eating there. In walks Barry Dillon. The head of the whole thing is right there, and I've never spoken to Barry Dillon. And Karen is going, "Oh, say hello, introduce yourself." And I'm shocked. I can't do that. And I'm not going to do this, you know. And the guy, his person goes to the bathroom, and Karen, you have your chance. And I walk up to him, and I go, "Mr. Diller, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Charles Rosin." And he was very gracious. He had this look like, "Oh, you're a real person, really?" And he stood up and he shook my hand and he looked at me and we only talked for a minute, very short conversation. But what I took away from it, and it was the moment I went, yes. And you know, 1991 was a really great year for Darren and I to work together on this particular television show. And this was the halfway mark. And he looked at me and he said, "You have a chance." That was after everything that had happened. Them running the radio, we're doing summer episodes, that we had a chance. And the truth is, Dee, we didn't blow it.
Yeah.
So talk to me about, let's get into this episode. Talk to me about now you get the order from first of all, Darren, did you like the idea of the beach club? Did you and Chuck talk about the beach club?
Yeah. I remember talking about it. I love the Flamingo Kid. I thought it was a great idea. I mean, it was the summer to be at the beach, to change it up, that it wasn't going to be in school, that we were going to embrace the idea that it was summer and play summer as summer. But what I remember is Chuck had a vacation planned in Hawaii to the Four Seasons in Maui. And the only way to keep the ball rolling is for me to join Chuck and his family on vacation. So I joined them at the Four Seasons in Maui, which was kind of amazing. I'd never been there. And
nor had we. And our friend, one of Karen's closest girlfriends from New York, was in a new relationship, and her partner was the general manager of the place. So it was empty hotel. You remember that? We got the Elton John suite. This is where Elton John went for rehab.
I was really impressed by your room.
Yeah, it was really huge.
There was nothing like I didn't get that suite.
I
remember that room. And I remember spending a lot of, you had been there before me and you discovered this cocktail you loved, iced berries, which I think was vodka and champagne and berries.
Berries, yeah.
We drank a lot of that and sat by the pool.
We did, and we broke it down. And I remember also us looking at the footage, because you still were doing your last cut on Spring Dance. And what my memory of it was jogging down is that it just became really clear. Oh, just keep letting Brian dance. Just let him dance. Look how good he can dance. And we didn't have to do the dialogue. You know, you're trying to fill up the time. I want the fans to notice something. Do you ever wonder why our title sequence is so long? It's because if you had a long title sequence, you didn't have to shoot as much. You didn't have to spend as much shooting, right? So long title sequence, long end title sequence. You know, that was the spelling.
So how do you guys start building the beach club? I guess is where we can start. Do you guys see it the same? You go back with?
No, we have different roles at that point. Darren is. Were you on that scout with Jim Weatherall and Paul and?
I think I remember you guys. I think I saw it after you found it, and I was kind of blown away by the fact that we were going to shoot there. I remember thinking like, wow, we're really going to shoot at the beach in Santa Monica, just right in town, especially after filming most of the series at a warehouse in Van Nuys. It was a great.
Nice, Altadena, Torrance, we're all over the map.
Yeah, right. It was like we're finally going to be somewhere nice. We were never in Beverly Hills.
Well, the city of Santa Monica was infamous. There's certain towns that are very difficult to do production in. Malibu and Santa Monica and the South Bay really are the head of the list. So this woman in Santa Monica didn't want us to do anything. And I remember, and I saw Jim Weatherall, Darren, that when we were at the studio together for the memorial service, and Jim Weatherall was there. He was the UPM. He's about 15 years older than me. And he like, you're alive. Hello. And I remember saying to Jim, you know, see this woman here telling you what we can and can't do? I never want to hear her voice again. Good luck. And I left and went back to the writer's room where I belong. Because that really is the temperament of a writer, not as a producer. I had to learn how to do management. It took a while.
So one of the other things that comes up in this episode, and now we're getting into the nitty gritty of the episode here. In the cliffhanger, Andrea and Brandon almost have this moment. So how are you guys thinking about resolving this to get it back to a friendship?
Well, I think we knew that we didn't want that relationship to evolve into a relationship. It was not where we wanted to see Brandon going. It's not the role we wanted Andrea to play on the show. And so we just had to kind of nip it in the bud as quickly as possible. Wouldn't you say, Chuck?
Yeah, unrequited love is more enticing than requited anyway. And we wanted our Brandon to be, the lover boy, the guy,
Right.
And you didn't want him encumbered in a relationship.
Definitely. And then there's some new characters that get created, right? Because of the beach club. We have Henry Thomas, right? Mm-hmm. And how do we create Henry Thomas? And I really want to know this Young and the Restless thing, and where does that come from that you can't interrupt Henry Thomas's Young and the Restless? Which I love, by the way. It's amazing. Yeah.
I was watching that and I don't remember.
That one was me, because I had met somebody back when I was a reporter who for the Women's Wear Daily, and I walked in to try to talk to this guy. He said, "I'm watching the Young and Restless." Okay. I'll wait. So I remembered that. But with Henry, the actor who plays the manager, Henry Thomas, James Pickens, one thing that he was in on that you wouldn't know, and I'm not sure you know this, Darren, because this was more of the administrative stuff we had to deal with. SAG had made a complaint on us for being racist, and we did not have enough.
I do remember that.
And that, you think I was mad about a Beach Club standee? What you to call Mr. Rosin a racist? No. Just the opposite. So, so in the middle of my story, of course, you're going to come in here and say,
understandably, it was a very white show. So I thought it was a good, hey.
Hi, Darren.
It was
another special.
It was a good piece.
The racism,
again, he was really good.
Yes, he sure was.
So great. And I love that. I love that aspect.
He went on to do Grey's Anatomy and has done so well in his career, Emmy-winning actor.
Yeah.
And then we have this thing later on, and because I'm kind of building to the whole breakup and all that, but I want to get through some of the other stuff first. You have this.
Say hello to Karen.
Hello, Karen.
Karen wrote many scripts.
Nice to meet you, Karen. It's exciting to have you here as well. So now we got another mystery. Karen Rosin. Yes.
Okay.
I want to ask about Chris Suter, and we bring this teacher in that all the girls have a crush on, and this is kind of like the first time that Andrea has a crush on one of the teachers. Where does that sort of come from?
I was watching the show with really like watching it like someone that had never, not only someone had never seen the show before. I was like, wow, it was all a surprise to me, including him. And
we have no recollection of Chris Suter. Yeah,
when I saw it all came back, but I don't remember. I just thought, wow, that was considered the heartthrob in the day.
Well, he had just come off the series Elvis.
Oh, I thought he was Elvis. Yeah,
exactly.
So he had a high profile,
Right.
and I liked the show. I'd seen a couple episodes, and it got canceled. So I'm real excited because Beverly Hills kids went to summer school in those years, you know, and so we said, okay, in the 90s, we're going to have him do it too. And this was the teacher. And boy, oh boy, we knew about the second episode that we were not going to develop this character anymore. You know, James Pickens was.
Now I remember. Now I remember.
I'm not finishing.
Now I remember because of the Elvis thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But he was like a lock. So I was looking at him, this is the heartthrob. I forgot.
But that's the beginning of an Andrea thing, right? I mean, we definitely go down that road at some point where Andrea's kind of crushes on her teachers. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Chuck.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the one thing you have to understand, we were doing by this point, we're already doing these summer episodes on top of now 22 a full season we earned. So you got 28 episodes. You got to look for material. Like, well, what stories can we do? It's a lot of storylines. So what can we do with what can we do with the character? And having crushes on older teachers made sense.
And the thing with Brandon having to leave Nat, right, to go work at the beach club, another great storyline that you guys put in there, because I feel like Nat became, Brandon's almost like a second dad, right?
I thought Joey was really good in that episode. Their relationship was great, and I love seeing Brandon kind of like be selfish and realize that he screwed up, and tried to do the right thing.
Yeah,
to take the job and basically then tell the guy, sorry, I'm still going to go and give a week's notice. So he got it both ways.
Totally.
But then he finds himself, and that's the moral center of the show. Brandon not rocking out on Sandy can't hear what Darren's saying. So
I know.
Chuck will do like a interpretation. Everyone.
But that this Brandon was really, the sweetness came out in this episode and the moral center of it. The Brandon is the Boy Scout. Here he was, but don't we wish more men were like that?
But watching the episode again, I thought if there was one thing I wish we could have found was who Joey hired. I wish we'd come up with someone unexpected.
Yeah.
I think remember in the next, isn't it going to be Steve, or do we do that in the following summer? We did that the following summer.
Yeah. I just wish we'd set somebody up so that it was like a surprise. It was just.
Yeah.
It was an opportunity, a missed opportunity. I was like, oh, that could be better.
All right, so let's deal with this. The whole breakup, the I'm late stuff. I guess let's talk about the setup of Cindy finding the box and all that kind of stuff. I love that. Tell me about where that's coming from, Darren. How are you? You got to do this, you got to write this episode down, clean everything up, sort of, like you said. So where does that sort of start in that process for you?
Trying to do it in a way that feels honest from Brenda's point of view. And I think it's such a cringy thing to have to talk to your parents about sex, and that she never meant to, but she had to, and she was forced to. And I think that the more that I think the more those sort of uncomfortable moments piled on for her, it just made her feel like, I don't want to have the fact that her parents knew that they were already that she was having sex with Dylan. I think in a way it took a lot of the air out of it for her, because it wasn't something, it was suddenly like, it wasn't sexy anymore now that her parents knew. And it just felt, I feel like it put the relationship in a different place. But it was trying to tell a story that we had to kind of like really, I don't know, make it feel emotionally honest for a character who that didn't seem to be the way things were headed.
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely. Chuck, what's
Very
your
challenging. We've always said that Darren did a great job doing that. Very difficult task.
And I also, you know what I really liked in terms of all the character development and everything, also just the technical way that Brenda got outed, because we had, okay, I'm going to start doing the recycling, and therefore she's in trash, where Brenda would never have figured. So that was it wasn't a cringy way, like it felt very natural that it could have happened. And I like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, then she answers the door for Dylan, and she has the box in her hand. And
I think that's the fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny.
Do you remember writing that at all and thinking, oh, that's funny? Or does, how does that coming to you?
I think I remember thinking that something to kind of like cut the melodrama a little bit,
Yeah.
and that's how Dylan would basically know that everything was out on the table and it would be just completely awkward.
Yeah.
I swear to God, we won't, he said.
I want to ask you guys about James Eckhouse and Jim and Cindy. I think the conversation that they have in the room when they're talking to Brenda about sex and all that stuff. Now, and I'm curious from Sandy's perspective, when you see the episode, are you writing this for knowing that this is the conversation that families are not somebody on one of these forums wrote to me that they had conversations with their parents through the conversations you created in 90210. The conversation that Jim and Cindy's having with Brenda in the living room sort of triggers their conversations. Are you writing for that, or are you just writing for the characters? Chuck or Darren?
I thought you asked Sandy.
I think we're writing for the characters. I mean, I feel, and I think, Chuck, you can add to this. I feel like we were never really trying to send a message. We were trying to behave honestly. And I think that's why the audience related to the show the way they did, because they could see themselves in these characters. They felt there was something truthful about the way the characters were behaving. So I think we weren't trying to say, this is the message.
Yeah, and that's what I was really scared about with this episode, that we were going to start preaching, because we had really done that line. We had done the 8th episode.
It's Chuck. It's hard to hear you right now. I don't know what happened there.
Are you better now?
Yes, way better. Yeah.
Okay. I was saying that
it's hard to do it.
Sending a message.
Guys, what's happening?
Well, okay.
Preach.
See, we didn't want to preach, and that I was worried that would be the case. And so all the really social dramas that we did, the question was just trying to make it natural and not even reveal what the episode is really going to be about, where the drama is. Try to make it light in the beginning, so our younger fans would go along with us and, oh my God, it's a message show, but it isn't a message show.
Yeah.
Samuel Goldwyn had that great quote about messages. If you want a message, go send a Western Union.
Sandy,
nobody knows anything about anything in Hollywood, and
that one
the
too.
reality is, it's so hard to make these things work.
Yeah.
Like it's a miracle when one of these things works, that I don't think, certainly as executives, we weren't sitting there trying to facilitate conversations in the real world. As I think Chuck said, the show is sort of a combination of certainly in the beginning social issues, and then it evolved into really a youth ensemble drama. And the goal was to try to stay, I think, as honest as one could possibly stay in the confines of dramatic television. And the fact that this show was having the cultural impact that it was having is, even as I look back today, a miracle, right? I was really moved when I saw all the posts on social media when Luke, tragically passed. And it was just a reminder of how in the culture, Chuck and Darren was able to take this show and take these characters. I mean, they were truly beloved. And you know, so again, from our standpoint, we weren't trying to send any specific message. It was just going out there and having an impact like nothing any of us, I think, had ever worked on up until that.
You saw it, Darren saw it firsthand. You were, I guess, I got the trophy somewhere. You went to London with the cast to get our first award, right?
You know, I went to London with the cast because the show was a hit in the UK, and it wasn't a hit yet in the States. And I went to London with the cast because I heard that we had fans there. So I was curious to see fans of the show because I hadn't really met any yet at home. It hadn't really
just
off here.
Just to go back for 1 second, we have two of our viewers that gave us a little reminder, Lori and Jessica. Wasn't it Lucy Liu that replaced Brandon at the Peach Pit?
Maybe. Yes.
She was in 90210.
Really?
Lucy was?
Lucy Liu, yes.
Really?
We were really good at that. Yeah, we could tell. Yeah, sure.
Yes, she was. We did that. Yes.
Yeah, of course we did.
Okay, yeah.
Wow.
What else you got, Lily?
Well, I have sort of a fun fact followed up with a question for Darren. So just going back really quickly to the spring dance episode when Andrea is sitting on her couch eating ice cream and we see her watching her television and the opening credits come in for Prom Nightmare. And in your commentary for the DVDs, you mentioned that you played homage to your grandfather, Louis Taft, because you had his name in the opening credits. Tell us a little bit about that.
Wow, that's a real deep piece of trivia.
She won.
Shout out to my grandfather.
Did I win the internet today?
Wow. I guess in the credits for the fictional movie she was watching, Prom Nightmare, said it was produced by Louis Taft, who was my grandfather. So it was
very cool.
Great for him.
And Lori McKenzie says, "Hey, we know everything." Ha ha ha. So that's two quotes for you, Lori. Yeah.
Well, here's something, Lori, you can learn. Chris Suter was the name of the most popular art teacher at Beverly Hills High School.
I was going to ask you that, Chuck.
You know that, Sandy, right? Was he there with you, Suter?
What's that?
Was Lyle Suter there? Yeah.
I knew his kids.
Yeah.
Michael.
So that's where you got Chris Suter's name. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, cool. So let's talk about the few conversations that Brenda and Dylan have for the breakup. There's the first conversation that they have outside the house, which is like I live in Altadena, so it's 3 minutes from me. And so talk to me about writing some of that. I mean, arc me through walking through the breakup. And did you guys want them to break up?
I mean, I don't think it was something that was planned until we had to sort of take this real hairpin turn. But I think it created drama and it worked for us, when you say.
Definitely. Yeah.
It wasn't our choice. We didn't really have.
It's hard to hear you again, Chuck. You went.
We didn't really even have time to think about it. In because we were doing so many, it was moving so quickly. Is kind of how I remember it. That it wasn't, I used to tell people all the time when they would ask questions along those lines, and I just say, well, we're making it up as we go along.
Right.
And oftentimes at this point we were, just getting it done. We were, that first summer was a big surprise for us, but it was so gratifying. I mean, we owned it. And I'd love you to start talking about it, Peter, because Darren, if you last week we were together with Larry Mullen and we were talking about music, and I said, well, I did all the oldies, but Darren did all the contemporary songs. He knew all of that. So tell us about Losing My Religion. I mean,
I love that song. I remember being on the mix stage and seeing it play over the Porsche and everything, and I thought, wow, that it just works so great. And then sadly watching it just now, seeing the song be replaced, we didn't think about the fact that, we weren't buying rights in perpetuity for all this great music we had on 90210. So all of it had to be replaced subsequently for syndication and I don't think anybody had the idea that people would be watching and talking about the show all these years later. So they weren't spending the money on these great iconic songs that we were to get in. And I guess they were a lot cheaper just to have it in for like the first or couple runs.
So I do know that that first season, I think that they only did it for like 2 plays. That's how little faith they had that we were going to be around. So then Kenny Miller had to go back and buy it at least for what was the 5 years, which was the standard then.
Right.
Yeah, who knew?
Right.
I'm in the middle of a whole brouhaha about that, and that's it for another time.
Uh-huh.
Because I find the show unwatchable without our music.
The audience, well, in some ways, the audience gets cheated not to hear the great music, because I feel like, the 90210, the same way you watch John Hughes movies to hear those soundtracks. I mean, 90210 had that kind of a soundtrack when it aired, and I think it just made it so much more fun to watch. But yet, it still holds up.
Totally. So, how did you pick "Losing Your Religion"?
I mean, it was REM. People, I knew it. I knew the song. It was just sort of like a great song and just a great moment for that song.
And it showed how far we had come, because as Sandy can tell you, you may want a song that, is a great song, but if they don't license it to you, you don't get it. And we had a lot of, we weren't even trying to get hit songs or contemporary songs. You did a little bit. You brought in Hippie Chick and a couple of songs that were there, but a lot of them were just, here's one that hasn't been released yet. Do you like it? We had a lot of that in that first year. So to get this song and then the next week after get Elvis Costello, I knew we were on the map because we were getting real music.
And the show really was the precursor to first the WB and then the CW, like building an entire network on the back of this formula. These youth ensemble dramas with the music, but for 90210, which of course begat Melrose Place, I don't even know that the WB or CW exists as a network today.
And then Darren, talk to me a little bit, or both of you guys talk to me a little bit about the breakup scene itself, and writing some of that dialogue. Darren, or for both of you guys, do you start to eventually hear Luke's voice when you write for Dylan, and you start hearing Shannon's voice when you're writing for Brenda? Is that sort of what the process is like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we know the characters; they're in our heads, and I think Brenda was very headstrong, and she made this decision. She wasn't going back on it. And I think Dylan is like, he's a sensitive guy. And I mean, watching that scene again, I was reminded just, how much your heart breaks for that character and how much Luke brings to it, and it's just like, here's this guy that, he did nothing wrong and he was getting dumped, but you realize how much he loved Brenda in that scene and how much she kind of breaks his heart.
Do you remember where? I think it's one of the most iconic moments in the show. Do you remember where you were when you wrote that dialogue for the two of them?
No.
You were above Tommy Tangs. Of course, I know where you were. You were above Tommy Tangs.
No, at that point, yeah, a little bit. Maybe a little. I had it off of Tommy Tangs. That's true. I don't know if I still had it then. I think I was more. We were all together in the Variety Building, at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Is Dylan, and I guess this is the tough question, but is Dylan did you love writing for him the most? Or I guess that's a tough question to ask, but I feel like he's always got the great line, the great sort of way to wrap it all up. Is it fun writing for Dylan?
Yeah, I mean, he was a great character, and in that he was the most unusual character in terms of just he was wise, he was cool. I mean, you kind of project all of the things you would like to say into that character, I think, into his voice.
Yeah, I mean it works all the way through, and then we get the last shot. The last scene of this beach blanket episode where they're in school, and we have that awesome sort of Dylan walking away shot. With Brenda close up on the camera, tight. Who comes up with that shot, and how does that play?
I mean, that I think was Chuck Braverman. That was the director, and I actually watching that again. I thought, there's not many opportunities on a show like 90210 because you got to keep moving and moving and moving to kind of like create camera work that enhances the story. And I thought, wow, that really that enhanced the story. That made that last moment so much more powerful. His camera work, and we didn't have that many opportunities. I mean, don't you think, Chuck? The directors weren't given many opportunities to kind of like make statements with the camera on the show.
It's true, but we were really lucky. We had at this period of time, we had two directors, Chuck Braverman and Dan Attias.
Yeah, really good. Yeah.
Into what we were doing and really got some really good, terrific performances out of our cast.
All right.
You write, as I was saying before, you write a line and the actor is going to say it, and we would have meetings. I'm sure, Darren, this is the way it's done in the shows you're doing today, right? You have a tone meeting with your director, and you basically tell the director, this is how I want them to be done. This is what's going on in the scene, because you got to explain them. Sure. They don't know the series as well as we, the writer producers.
Yeah, but those guys, I remember now, like those were the two best directors we had.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Sandy, was the network happy with us now during the summer episodes? Did it deliver what we wanted? I mean, seriously, in that, not the.
Oh, look, it was happy days, right? and heady days. The show exploded. I mean, it really took off in the summer. And one of the things I didn't say earlier was it wasn't just that we didn't want to stop the momentum. It was that we recognized that we could actually grow the show when everybody else was in repeats. So the show was up against Cheers, right? Cheers in repeats was much less compelling. And that's the other reason we wanted to do it. But, that last episode and then the first episode of season 2, I mean, those two episodes laid the foundation for 9 years of television.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we have some comments. I'm going to read them. Darren Martin, a friend of the show, I'm sure we all know who that is. He says 30 years and counting and still the best. So
what's that? Sorry.
30 years and counting and still the best. Yes.
Darren, you met Darren on the street. You remember? In New York City, you saw somebody wearing the.
Oh yes.
Yes, he's the 90210 bro, I think.
Number one.
He's a true super fan. He's a lovely guy.
He's awesome. Yeah. We all love him. Okay. Miranda says that song makes me picture Dylan sitting in his Porsche, the REM song. Yes.
Yeah.
And then Stephanie says, watching the DVD, not the same with the replacement song to Luke.
I understand. I feel you.
So
all right. You got any good fan questions, Lily?
I do. So being that the Brenda and Dylan breakup was somewhat forced because of the backlash received because Brenda had sex without remorse, what were the original plans for the couple for that summer? And how did Shannon and Luke feel about Dylan and Brenda breaking up?
We didn't have plans. We didn't know.
We didn't have
episodes, and we didn't have plans. But Chuck, I don't know if you recall. I don't know. I can't remember how the actors felt about it.
No, I think they just knew it was happening. It had to happen, and we were gonna. And I think we probably told them we're gonna get you back together at some point. And it was really. I mean, I look at year 2 in some ways this way. We did get them back together, and for most of the year, they were having sex. The audience just didn't see it. So the audience knew that those two characters were having sex. And I think that's how you go back and you start looking at the episodes before the condom episode. It's kind of, it's implied. No line of dialogue puts it together, but you start to see that they're really intimate with each other.
By the way, Chuck, you're not being completely honest. Shannon made you pay for years.
It was the next year. It was when she breaks up with for Kelly. Yeah, that's a whole other.
Let me just tell you
Future episode.
something. As a network executive, having Chuck Rosin call you at 7 o'clock at night when you're just desperate to go home and start a conversation with, "I'm gonna kill her." That was my life.
Man, the old days. Yeah.
I do recall when she called us at like 7 a.m. one morning and complained because Chuck had made them go reshoot a scene because she had gone in wardrobe and makeup, got her makeup done, and then went and did her own makeup and changed her own wardrobe and came out much sluttier into a little scene.
And she just had some cosmetic surgery.
We can't, Chuck. We lost you again, buddy. We lost you again. Sorry, we missed that.
She also wanted to show off some of her cosmetic surgery that she had while I was out of town. So we made her reshoot, but she was not happy about that. But it was then, and there's a lot of things about it, and really, what all that really should matter, and certainly in the high school years, is that every time we wrote something and we needed her to get it to the place that we needed to get it for the show and for the character and everything, she was flawless at that. More than anyone else in our cast.
We had Christina Leese on here last week, who played, obviously you guys know, played Emily, and she said she loves watching Shannon on the show. That she's just, she just comes at it, and you don't even know that she's doing much, but she's doing everything in her scenes. I think she's a super talented. Obviously, she gave Brenda life, and she gave all the other characters life through her character. So she's an amazing talent for sure. And we're all rooting for her, right, in her battle.
Yeah, that's for sure.
She was excellent.
Yeah. Did you guys know that? I mean, the diehard Brenda and Dylan fans of there's like the fans that like Kelly and Dylan, and then there's the Brenda Dylan. But the Brenda and Dylan seem to be the most vocal. They love these two people together. Did you know it was going to? It almost felt like the audience felt like they got broken up with too at this time. Did you know that it was going to be like that? That it was going to be that kind of level?
I think we could see it on the screen. I think Karen, you wrote that episode where they were really together for the first time, right?
I wrote the French. No, I wrote the French.
No, isn't it?
Oh,
Is
I
there,
wrote the
is there a
French.
romantic episode? And I can't.
It's hard to hear you guys. Yeah, you guys. So for some reason, we lose you guys every once in a while. Yeah.
They just
We're
had.
in the basement here in Venice.
They just had amazing chemistry.
They did have great chemistry, especially that episode. That was wonderful. Yeah, they definitely did. So
Awesome.
many people are totally committed to the Brendan Dylan matchup, and then they want the Kelly Brandon. So
Yeah.
made them all happy.
Listen, guys, we can probably talk about this for 2 hours. We're gonna wrap at this point. Lily, do you have any additional fan things that you want to bring up? We're good.
I think we're good.
We got them. Okay. So listen, just some things about the podcast here. Next week, Chuck and Larry and I and Lily will be back talking about Valerie Malone. How did that character come to be? So that should be a fun episode. Darren Martin says, "No, don't go." Well, we're at the end. We are at the end. I'm sorry. We're definitely going to be back next week, though. Another one. No, keep it going. Okay. No, we're at the end.
On a personal level,
the thing about the show is that it comes back every week, and we also have another episode coming Friday with Larry Mullen. We're doing an episode in season 6. Home is where the tart is, the season 6 opener. So this Friday we'll be doing that. Lily, you got something?
We have one more announcement to make.
Okay, go ahead. What's the announcement?
The contest.
We're gonna do a little contest to get some likes and shares to the page and all this kind of stuff. So there'll be an announcement on social media about that as well. So Friday is Larry Mullen doing
and Jessica Klein.
Jessica Klein, yep, doing an episode from the top of season 6. It's a reunion here. And then next week back with Valerie Malone. Listen, guys, I want to say I'm all about gratitude these days, and I kind of said it before, but I want to say it again. Thank you all for the work that you put into this program. It goes beyond just dialogue, and I mean, maybe it is that for you at this point all these years later, but the moments and the memories you created for everybody who watched it, maybe a thought in their mind, the way you shifted the conversation was very powerful. And I think you always brought people into their world, but also helped affect their own world, including mine and I'm sure Lily's and all the other fans that are watching. So I agree with Darren Martin that 30 years later, it's still the best show on television. But anyway, guys, so I think we rock this, and we'll catch you next time. I'd love all of you back.
I would also like to personally thank
Good to see
Darren,
you,
Sandy,
I
for
don't know
coming
your
on.
word, but it's good to see you.
Too, Sandy.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.